All right, so I'm on my refined painting layer. I've got my customized brush. And even if I zoom in, what's nice is I can see the whole picture in my navigator. And I just use Option and I can steal colors, and I'm still trying to create kind of a more customized in-between palette between these yellows and these brights. And because it's at 70%, I get a little bit of that color overlap, which is helpful. And especially because I'm doing something furry, this kind of texture is going to be helpful. Now, every once in a while, I like to move over to swatches and pick an out there color and throw it in there, because then that can help me adjust it. Especially since I have so many warms going on, maybe throw some cools in here. But that's my kind of, I like to have fun with color when I paint. So it's up to you. Now, even though my brush is smaller than it was when I was doing my flat color, I'm still trying to keep it pretty large. And I'm trying to not be afraid of making kind of big decisions, blocking it in. I don't want to get lost in detail. Again, I'm not trying to perfect anything yet. I'm just building up transitions and texture and a color range. On a human face, we always want to make things really smooth, but it's better to start pretty chunky with the different shadows, because it's a lot easier to blur and soften an edge than it is to sharpen a soft edge. If it does take a while for your brush to catch up, you might want to simplify your brush design, because tools are only as good as how predictable they are. It also helps to not have a lot of other programs open, because you don't want your brush to lag behind you. And if you have just a lot of complicated shapes in your brush, then it sometimes will, no matter how strong your computer is. All right, so as you notice, as I'm building up more textured layers, I'm trying to get a sense of just my color palette using this rounded shape of the head. Then I can bring those to the neck. I don't want to stay in just one area, right? And I can use the navigator to zoom out, but you see that it does make a big difference. This refined painting. And what we all want to do when we're trying to control a painting is to really tighten up. And digital definitely invites that. It makes you long to kind of zoom in and do really tight detail. And I'm going to try to get you not to do that. Try to remind you to stay loose. And yet that every brush stroke should matter. You know, you're not just futzing around. So keep your opacity pretty high, but not at 100% when you're refining. That way you can shape things with a little bit more informed purpose. So that greenish in there. Now this is where you build the tone and kind of the attitude of your caricature, right? I'm kind of building the personality of my animal here. I might throw in a crazy color again. Give me something to react to. I really like the classics, the cyans, the magentas. Push the color that's in the photo a little bit. And then kind of glaze over them at these low opacities. Now, look how much the gray matters behind it as you're painting. If I turn the gray off, those colors will look very different. Right? It's hard to see lights and darks as clearly when you have a white background. And even though our end product will just have a blank background, we want to choose our colors with that gray in the background. That's going to help us. Now I'm remembering why I haven't done an animal in a while. They just have so much fur. Fur for days. It's a little annoying. That's okay. Now this is just our introduction to digital painting. We don't even need to finish these to fully learn everything that I want you to be exposed to, because there's just a lot of repetition in this technique. And a lot of you might choose to use digital painting as one of your techniques for your final project. And I'd rather you spent more time and effort on that than just doing an animal or a caricature. But I want you to kind of see what it takes to control and kind of create your own style with these tools. And then digital painting professionally is not usually used on its own very much. It's used to augment things like compositing for special effects. It's basically your confidence in your ability to fully create anything believably that you need to digitally, just by painting it in, once you understand how the paints tools work. So much fur. It's going to help me define the anatomy a little bit better here, these highlights. Keep your finger close to that option button and keep changing up your colors. And don't worry about painting outside the lines. And if I was a professional blogger or YouTuber, this is where I'd put on a music track and it would speed up and it'd be done in about 8 minutes. That would represent probably about 10 hours of work. Just looking ahead a little bit, the next thing we're going to do is then play with our refined painting layer a little bit. Make a duplicate of it, play with the color balance of it, play with sharpening it, play with, just push it in different directions and see if that hints at anything. Blend that into our original and then do more refined painting on top of that. Because it's good to kind of question what you're doing every once in a while. Now, what you'll see in a lot of the videos as well is every once in a while, I'll save it first, they'll do this. they'll select the whole thing. I guess the easiest way to do it would be to create a new flat layer. So hold down Option, say Layer, Merge Visible, and then transform it and flip it horizontally. Because that can show you if things look really off. And it shows me I'm not going strongly enough on the shadows under the jaw, but I'm not really there yet, right? But you can see how this refined painting layer is really starting to help. So every once in a while you can check it by flipping it. It will help you see things that our eyes kind of get immune to because we're just focusing so much. But already we've come a long way, building up in between colors. I'm liking the pink and I'm liking the blues. And I'm always looking at my reference for lighting ideas, and I'm squinting a lot to help me see the values more clearly. And as much as possible, I'm trying to work over the whole thing before I get too invested in any one approach. And my advice would be, if you're going to use a lot of different brushes, to try them on different layers. So this is my refined painting with my custom brush, and I tend to use just mostly one brush throughout. But if I do another layer, and I might decide, okay, let's use some of these presets that are built into Photoshop. Let's see. Maybe I want to use this one. And these are nice because these are angle sensitive. I have to be careful painting on the gray there. Wow, that's like barely showing up at all. So I want to look at my brush presets, choose what I think. Yeah, this is kind of a fun one to show. It's a very different feel, and I actually don't like the way it looks, but maybe you will. But then go to your brush settings and mess with it, right? And the different options you have. So this brush can kind of flare out and give you texture, which could be really good for doing things like off the side, right? But it can look really kind of hokey and fake as well. So it's good to have that on a separate layer so you don't have trouble removing it if you don't like what it does. Some of my favorite Photoshop brushes are just these textured ones at the end, because they're very much like ones that I would make for myself. So play with shape dynamics, make it pressure sensitive, play with the angle jitter, and even play with scattering a little bit. If you want a lot of scattering, you can do something like that. Keep the count low, and then watch what can happen. You can cover big areas. They're kind of like airbrush ideas. Right. But anything that does it fast for you is also going to look a little phony looking up close. So that's why I say do it on a different layer for each new kind of brush you use, in my opinion. Then I'll just put that layer underneath and I'll continue with my brush. Now you can always modify your brush too. So if I want to make a new brush, do the same thing, 2000 pixels. Don't even need to give it a name. And then I can just use my custom brush with black and just tap it once. There it is. And now I want to